Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Marvel's Moon Knight. It was called The Friendly Type. And as it begins, we find Layla getting herself a fake passport while explaining how she's basically a relic returner who skims a bit when she goes relic hunting to return various relics to where they belong, to an unknown woman making the passport, whom it seems has known her for a long time and who cares about her. We then join Harrow in Egypt as he's following the scarab compass and seems to have found the tomb of Arit, or at least thinks he has. Next, we catch up with Mark, who is running across some rooftops in Cairo before stopping to engage with some people who seem to have killed someone from whom he was hoping to get some information. So he engages in a pretty cool fight with them, and in fact almost kills one of them, but is stopped when he's urged not to kill them by Steven's reflection in his knife blade. Then we sort of flash to him in a taxi, where he's apparently trying to find the same guys after, I guess, they got away from him when we last saw them. And he ends up chasing them again, but this time on the ground, through the streets of Cairo. And this included running on top of a box truck, which is pretty cool. And when he presses one of the men for Harrow's location, he is again talked down by a reflection of Steven. And then the next we see him, he's out in the desert having killed one of the guys with a knife and beating the tar out of another one as he demands information from this guy, which he does by holding him over a cliff by his own tie, trying to find out where Harrow is. And as he's hanging this guy over the cliff, the guy takes out a knife, it cuts his own tie and falls to his death, rather than tell him where Harrow is. And as he does so, he says, "Praise Amit." The crazy thing about all this is that Mark seems to think he's not, in fact, responsible for the body count that's been accruing around him. But Steven denies responsibility as well. So, like, one of them is in control of the body when the body is being used to kill these people, but neither of them seems to be aware that they're doing it. Whichever one is doing it, they're not aware. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Mark then has a conversation with Khonshu, which ends in him turning the day into night in order to send the gods a message and gather the Aeneid, to which he opens a portal for Mark so that he can join the other avatars of the gods in the Great Pyramid of Giza. The first avatar he meets is called Yatzil, I think, if I'm saying that right. She's the avatar of Hathor, and the others follow. Their avatars show up as well. We get Isis, which is pronounced Isis, apparently, Tefnut, Osiris, and Horus. They're all represented through their various avatars. After the introductions, Khonshu speaks through Mark. It was kind of weird because every time he would talk, Mark's body would just kind of go like this and talk, and then he would stop. When Khonshu was done speaking, it was kind of weird. When he speaks, Khonshu asks for judgment against Harrow, which seems to fall on deaf ears. They don't see where he's done anything wrong. And the other gods are also bent on non-interference anyway, it seems. Nonetheless, they summon Harrow, who denies that he's trying to release Amit. So they say, "We summon Arthur Harrow," and he just kind of shows up there, which is kind of weird. So he denies that he's trying to do this, release Amit, and he accuses Mark of being insane, which triggers him to swing a punch at Harrow, only to have his punch caught by Osiris's avatar, or Osiris through his avatar. The avatars of the gods then speak to Mark directly, and he says, "Yeah, I am kind of unwell, but Harrow is dangerous, and you got to stop him," but they ignore him. And the meeting kind of ends. Yatzil then approaches Mark kind of on the side to let him know that the sarcophagus of a certain magi would help him find Amit's tomb, and that he'd have to start looking for this particular sarcophagus on the black market. So he goes there to do exactly that, and he runs into Layla, who says she can get him to a guy who can get him to the sarcophagus. Upon their arrival at this guy's location, they seem to notice they're being followed by guys who they suspect are Harrow's men. They are then taken to see this guy, but Mark doesn't know how to read the sarcophagus, and he ends up talking to Stephen in a reflection in the roof of this building, which is glass, who tells him how to move some of the things around to try to figure out the location. But as Mark is doing this, he's interrupted by this guy who I guess didn't want him to touch anything. And while that situation is unfolding, Harrow shows up with a scarab, offering the guy treasures if he stops helping Mark. At which point, Khonshu urges him to summon the suit so he can kick their asses, but he hesitates. And Harrow uses his magic cane to break the artifact that Mark was inspecting, but then Mark eventually does summon the suit, and he jumps down onto the scene from the top of a glass pyramid, holding his cape out in the shape of a crescent moon to sort of slow his fall. It was really actually pretty cool. And, then the fighting begins, while Layla tries to salvage some of the pieces from the messed up artifact, and she ends up getting in a fight of her own. Stephen then manages to take control of his body, and as soon as he does, the other Moonknight suit appears on him, so the Mr. Knight suit from the previous episode. And when he tries to talk everybody down rather than fight, he gets run through with a bunch of staffs by the guys, at which point Mark returns to control of the body, and the other suit shows up again. And the fight continues until it's down to just Mark and this guy that they had gone to see, whom he ends up killing with a flying moon shuriken type thing that he hucks at him. Later, Mark and Layla start assembling pieces of a sort of diagram, but they're not coming up with the information they need. And Layla asks Mark to let Stephen come out because he understands all the Egyptian stuff, which Mark allows despite Khonshu's dislike of the idea. This, of course, results in Stephen being able to piece the information together such that it will, in fact, direct them, Mark and Layla, to where they're trying to go if they can figure out what the sky looked like 2,000 years ago in terms of where the stars were at the time. And Khonshu, of course, says that he remembers and then turns back the night sky so that it looks like it did 2,000 years before. And he does this with the help of Mr. Knight, all the while saying that it will come at a cost, asking Stephen to tell Mark to free him when the gods imprison him for it. The process is a success, and it puts the stars in the right place where they were 2,000 years ago, but it drains Stephen's body, and he passes out on the sand. Meanwhile, Layla was in fact able to look at this placement of the stars from 2,000 years ago and pinpoint the location that they need to go to based on the stuff that they pulled from the artifact that they'd been looking at. Next, we see Harrow back at the pyramid talking to Khonshu, who is now apparently imprisoned inside a statuette. And he says that everything that Khonshu did to him while he was the Avatar forced him down the path that he's on, and that when he succeeds in his mission or his endeavors, it will be Khonshu's fault. So I thought this was a pretty good episode. It moved the ball forward quite a bit. It didn't drag, which I think is a reflection of the fact that they've decided to tell this story in 6 episodes as a limited series, as opposed to an ongoing series, as opposed to a season with 10 episodes. They're just getting right to it. So it's more like, it's unfolding more like a movie in that the pacing is not laborious. And I really like that. I thought the fight sequences were cool when Mark is going back and forth between Mark and Stephen, and the different Moonknight suits keep switching. It was pretty cool. Again, Oscar Isaacs is excellent in this part. He does a great job of transitioning from Mark to Stephen, because sometimes it's on the fly, and he does a great job of holding conversations with himself as the two different characters, and they come off as distinct, and you forget that it's the same actor. The scenes in Cairo were really cool. I'm sure it wasn't actually Cairo, but it looked great. The rooftop running scene was fantastic. I think it's cool how Stephen's been painted up to now as kind of a weenie, but they needed him to accomplish what they were trying to accomplish. And so they had to bring him out. They had to rely on his expertise. So I thought that was cool. Throughout the episode, Layla seems to understand more kind of what Mark/Steven have been going through with this whole Khonshu thing. And I think that's good. I'm hoping that at some point we start to understand Harrow's motives a little bit more. I don't really understand his motives. He seems crazy. But at the same time, I get the feeling that what he's trying to do isn't completely senseless, like that he really believes it's for the best, kind of like Thanos. So I hope that that turns out to be true. And at some point, I imagine we're going to hear more from Amit. We haven't really heard anything from them except the couple of times that Harrow has used their abilities to judge someone. That we haven't heard from them directly, so that'll be interesting, I think. But we're halfway through now. There are only 3 more episodes. So again, things should move forward rather quickly. So I'm looking forward to next week. But that's really all I had to say about this episode. So I'm going to take off. It would be great if you would subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. It would be great if you gave the video a like and made a comment. I'd really appreciate it. Until the next video, I wish you peace and long life.